Express is a 2004 American animated Christmas fantasy adventure film, 1-2, directed by Robert Zemeckis, who co-wrote the screenplay with William Broyles Jr., based on the 1985 children's book of the same name by Chris Van Allsburg. The film stars Tom Hanks in multiple roles, along with Daryl Sabara, Nama Gay, Jimmy Bennett, and Eddie Deezen. The film depicts human characters using live-action and motion capture computer animation, with production sequences for the latter taking place from June 2003 to May 2004. Set on Christmas Eve, it tells the story of a young boy who travels to the North Pole aboard a magical train guided by its conductor. The Polar Express premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival on October 13, 2004, and was theatrically released by Warner Bros. Pictures in the United States on November 10. The film received mixed reviews from critics and initially grossed $286 million against a record-breaking $165 to $170 million budget, which was the highest for an animated feature at the time. 7 later re-releases helped propel the film's gross to $318.2 million worldwide. The Polar Express was also the last film appearance for Michael Jeter before his death in 2003 and was dedicated to his memory. On Christmas Eve in Grand Rapids, Michigan, presumably in the 1950s, the Polar Express, a magical train bound for the North Pole, stops outside the house of a young boy who has become skeptical about the existence of Santa Claus. The conductor tells him where the train is going, and initially the boy declines boarding, but changes his mind as the train starts to move. In the main passenger car are many other children, including a very spirited girl and a know-it-all boy. The train stops to pick up a lonely boy named Billy, who, like the main boy, initially turns down the trip but has second thoughts. Because he is unable to catch up with the train, the main boy pulls the emergency brake, enabling him to board, but Billy chooses to sit alone in the rear observation car. The conductor berates the boy for the stop, saying they are on a very tight schedule. The children are served hot chocolate, and the girl leaves with the conductor to deliver Billy a cup. The boy finds her ticket on the seat and sees it has not yet been validated. While trying to take it to her, the wind blows it from his grasp and it flies through the wilderness before finding its way back into the observation car. When the conductor finds out, he escorts the girl through the rear observation car. Fearing that she will be thrown off the train, the boy travels across the car's roofs, where he encounters a ghostly hobo, who claims to be the king of the Polar Express and the North Pole. He helps the boy reach the engine, where he finds the girl driving the train because the engineer and firemen are repairing the headlamp. Following a near miss with a herd of caribou, a throttle malfunction due to a loose cotter pin sends the train speeding across a roller coaster-like track onto a frozen lake. They use a hairpin to fix the problem and regain control. The ice on the lake starts to break, but they manage to escape. The boy gives the girl her ticket, which the conductor punches. The train arrives at the North Pole, where the conductor announces that one of the children will be chosen to personally receive the first gift of Christmas from Santa. While waiting for Santa's arrival, the girl and main boy see Billy still sitting in the rear carriage. Billy tells them that Christmas has never worked out for him, but the boy and girl convince him to join the festivities. Because the main boy accidentally uncoupled the car, it rolls away and ends up on a turntable at Santa's workshop. The children make their way through multiple buildings and encounter a present addressed to Billy. The three are dumped into Santa's sack, where they also find the know-it-all boy, who was trying to find his presents. After the sack is loaded onto Santa's sleigh, the elves escort them out. The conductor, children, and elves assemble outside with a large Christmas tree, moments before Santa arrives. During the celebration, A bell comes loose from the galloping reindeer's reins, landing at the Maine boy's feet. The boy initially cannot hear its ring, until he finds it within himself to believe. He gives the bell to Santa, before the know-it-all begs Santa to select him. Santa tells him to be patient and show some humility. He commends the girl for her spirit and Billy for making new friends. Santa picks the Maine boy and lets him keep the bell as the first gift of Christmas. Santa departs, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. The children board the train to return home, and the boy discovers that he lost the bell through a hole in his pocket. When the Polar Express reaches Billy's house, he finds that Santa had given him his gift and a Christmas tree. The train then drops the Maine boy off with his friends, and the conductor wishes him a Merry Christmas. On Christmas morning, the boy finds a present containing his lost bell with a note from Santa. He and his younger sister Sarah joyfully ring the bell, but their parents cannot hear it due to their disbelief in Santa. The boy recalls his friends and Sarah eventually falling deaf to the bell as their belief faded over the years. Although he is now an adult, the bell still rings for him, as it does for all who truly believe. Cast: Tom Hanks, pictured in 2009, appeared in 6 different roles in The Polar Express. Tom Hanks as Hero Boy, adult voice and motion capture. Father: The Conductor. Hobo: Ebenezer Scrooge Puppet. Santa Claus: Daryl Sabara as Hero Boy, child voice. Josh Hutcherson as Hero Boy, additional motion capture. Nona Day as Hero Girl. Darian O'Driscoll as Hero Girl, additional motion capture. Megan Moore as Hero Girl, singing voice. Tanashi as Hero Girl, motion capture model. Peter Scolari as Billy, motion capture. Hayden McFarland as Billy, additional motion capture. Jimmy Bennett as Billy, speaking voice. Matthew Hall as Billy, singing voice. Eddie Deezen as Know-It-All. Jimmy Pinchak as Know-It-All, additional motion capture. Michael Jeter as Smokey and Steamer, voice, 9. Andre Sogliutsal as Smokey and Steamer, additional voice, hey. Leslie Zemeckis as Sarah, motion capture, and mother. Isabella Peregrina as Sarah, voice. Ashley Holloway as Sarah, additional motion capture. Dylan Cash as Boy on Train, voice. Brendan King and Andy Pellett as pastry chefs. Josh Eli, Rolandas Hendricks, John Scott, Sean Scott, Mark Mendonça, Mark Goodman, Gregory Gast, and Gordon Hart as waiters. Julene Renee as Redhead Girl and an Elf. Chris Coppola as Toothless Boy and an Elf. Connor Mateus as Toothless Boy, additional motion capture. Phil Fondacaro, Debbie Lee Carrington, Mark Pavanelli, and Ed Gale as elves. Charles Fleischer as Elf General. Steven Tyler as Elf Lieutenant and Elf Singer. Production, development and visual effects. Director/co-writer/co-producer Robert Zemeckis, left, and co-producer Gary Goetzman, right. Tom Hanks auctioned The Polar Express in 1999 after reading the book to his children with the hopes of playing the conductor and Santa Claus. 10. The book's original author Chris Stan Alsberg had been unwilling to sell the rights to the book for a film adaptation but changed his mind after learning of Hanks' involvement. Castle Rock Entertainment subsequently made a 7-figure commitment to co-produce the film with Hanks's company Playtone, Van Allsburg and William Tietler in March 2000. One of the conditions of the sale was that the resulting film not be animated, as Van Allsburg feared this would not accurately represent his characters. 11. Rob Reiner was originally hired as director, and the film was originally scheduled to be released in December 2001. 1. After the film was repeatedly postponed, Robert Zemeckis was hired as to replace Reiner as director and co-producer in February 2002. Zemeckis and screenwriter William Broyles Jr. subsequently rewrote the film. Zemeckis and Broyles' new draft expanded the roles of minor characters such as the girl, know-it-all, and the lonely boy, and added the new character of Hobo. 1. The Scrooge puppet was inspired by Zemeckis considering his childhood toys, one of which was a puppet. Citation needed. After Zemeckis' company Image Movers' contract with DreamWorks Pictures expired, he made a new deal with Warner Brothers Pictures to fund, distribute, and provide studio space for the film. 1. Despite Van Allsburg's original terms with Hanks, Zemeckis felt that a live-action version was unfeasible, claiming that it would look awful, and it would be impossible. It would cost $1 billion instead of $160 million. 11. Zemeckis felt that such a version would rob the audience of the odd style of the book, which she felt was so much a part of the emotion of the story. 10. However, Zemeckis also agreed that a conventional animated version would suit the film poorly. In order to keep his vision, a new process was created by which actors would be filmed with motion capture equipment in a black box stage, which would then be animated to make the resulting film. 10. Hanks stated that this method of working was actually a return to a type of acting that acting in films does not allow you to do, comparing the process to performing a play in the round. 12. The decision to film in motion capture necessitated another studio to co-produce, as the process was expensive and cost $1 million per minute of footage. After Universal Studios turned down the opportunity, investor Steve Bing agreed to finance half of the film's budget through his company Shangri-La Entertainment, which had only produced one other film. 1. Executives at Warner Brothers were nervous about the film's technology and whether audiences would accept it. 13. Père Marquette 1225, the basis for the Polar Express locomotive. The locomotive featured in the film was modeled after drawings of the Père Marquette 1225, 14, 15. In July 2002, Warner Brothers approached the 1225's owner, the Steam Railroading Institute, to study the engine. 16, 15. The Steam Railroading Institute's executive director Dennis Braid provided several assets for the film, including a bulb and valve gear from the engine, and a box of coal. Sounds from the engine were also recorded for the film. 17. Principal production of the film began in June 2003 at Warner Brothers Studios, Burbank, and wrapped in May 2004. 18. Hanks plays 6 roles in the film, including that of a small child, whose voice would later be dubbed in by Daryl Sabara. 19. Initially, Zemeckis considered having him play every role, but after trying this, Hanks grew exhausted, and they whittled down the number. 12. The only 2 characters in the film to not be animated through motion capture were Smokey and Steamer, mainly because of the huge size discrepancy and their more caricature nature compared to the rest of the cast. Ultimately, the characters were animated traditionally with skeletal animation rigs. 9. A deleted scene on the home media release has the engineer and fireman characters explain through a shadow puppet show that the hobo is the ghost of a homeless person who was killed while riding on the top of the train. 20. The film was Michael Jeter's last film performance, as he died on March 30, 2003, before he could finish recording his lines as the engineer and fireman. Following Jeter's death, Andre Sogliuzzo was brought in to record the characters' remaining dialogue, as well as redub most of Jeter's already recorded dialogue, except for Steamer during the caribou scene. 9. Soundtrack. Main article, The Polar Express, Soundtrack. The soundtrack album of the film, titled The Polar Express, Original Motion Picture Soundtrack, was released on November 2, 2004, by Reprise Records, Warner Music Group and Warner Sunset Records. 21. The song, Believe, was written by Alan Silvestri, music, and Glenn Ballard, lyrics, and was nominated for Best Original Song at the 77th Academy Awards. It was sung at the 77th Academy Awards show by original performer Josh Groban with Beyoncé and won a Grammy Award in 2006. The album was certified gold by the RIAA in November 2007. Having sold 724,000 copies in the United States, it is the best-selling film soundtrack/holiday album hybrid since Nielsen SoundScan started tracking music sales in 1991. Most of the original orchestral score featured in the film was not released on the soundtrack and has never been released. The soundtrack mostly comprises only songs featured in the film. A limited number of promotional, for your consideration, CDs, intended to showcase the film's score to reviewers of the film, were released in 2005. This CD contained nearly the complete score, but none of the film's songs. Various bootleg versions of the soundtrack, combining both the official soundtrack album and the orchestral-only CD, have since surfaced. 22. Architecture. The administration building of the Pullman Palace Car Company. The buildings at the North Pole and the film represent an earlier era in American railroading. Building design drew inspiration from the Pullman neighborhood in Chicago, home of a railroad car manufacturer, the Pullman Company. 23. Marketing. Video game. Main article, The Polar Express, video game. A video game based on the film was released on November 2, 2004, for GameCube, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 2 and Windows, developed by Blue Tongue Entertainment and published by THQ. 24, 25. The plot of the game is somewhat different than the film version. Within the game, the Ebenezer Scrooge puppet, who is set as the main antagonist of the game, attempts to prevent the children from believing in Santa Claus by stealing their tickets and trying to prevent the children from making it to the North Pole. 26, 27. Merchandise. Model railroad manufacturer Lionel produces a variety of Polar Express train sets and equipment, including locomotives, train cars, and trackside buildings. 28. Most of these are in O-scale, running on Lionel's 3-rail track, but they also produce an HO-scale version, an S-scale American Flyer version, and a simplified plastic toy version that runs on G-scale, or number 1 gauge, track. In all of these sets, the locomotive model is based on the film rather than the real 1225 and thus incorporates of the cosmetic changes made for the film, such as the longer cowcatcher and recessed headlight housing. Various manufacturers have produced look-alike train sets based on the Polar Express, but as these are not officially licensed, they cannot use the name. A typical example is Bachmann's more recent HO-scale North Pole Express, which includes a 262 locomotive. There exists in USRA 060 model with pilot and trailing trucks added, and 2 passenger cars in a Polar Express-inspired paint scheme. 30. Bachmann also produces an HO-scale model of Père Marquette 1225, but it is not available in Polar Express livery. The film has also spawned multiple real-world holiday train travel experiences based loosely on the film's train journey all over the United States, as well as Canada, and even the United Kingdom under license from Rail Events Incorporated. 33. These include the Polar Express train rides held at the Grand Canyon Railway. 34. 35. Great Smoky Mountains Railroad. 36. Texas State Railroad. 37. Whippany Railway Museum, and the Aspen Crossing. 38. Among others. The 1225 itself pulls a similarly themed Christmas train, albeit under the name of the North Pole Express. 39. The UK's first Polar Express train rides were hosted on the Dartmoor Railway and the Weardale Railway, which were both owned by the company British American Railway Services. These services were all diesel-hauled. However, in 2016, Telford Steam Railway became the first UK line to run the Polar Express with steam, 41, powered by one of two American-built S-16280 locomotives nose. 5197 and 6046 courtesy of Trent Valley Railway in Staffordshire, 43. PNP Events Ltd operates the Polar Express train rides in Oxfordshire, Colsey and Wallingford Railway, the Yorkshire Dales, Wensleydale Railway, 44, South Devon Railway, Royal Tunbridge Wells, Spa Valley Railway, and new for 2023, Edinburgh Waverley on the UK mainline network. The Polar Express train ride also operates on the Mid-Norfolk Railway, 45, and the Seaton Tramway operate the Polar Express tram ride, DOC, 46. Alongside the steam-operated Polar Express trains run at numerous heritage railways over the UK, vintage trains run their trains on the UK mainline network. Their trains have been operated with a selection of steam locomotives which has included Great Western 460 Hull Class No. 4965 Route Ashton Hall for the ride, albeit being renamed Polar Star. This name was originally won by 4005 Polar Star and later 70026 Polar Star. As of 2023, these trains still run, with their latest program of trains being hauled by Great Western 460 Castle classes No. 5043 Earl of Mount Edgecombe and No. 7029 Clun Castle. These trains run between Birmingham War Street and Dorridge. Concert presentations. In 2021, Cine Concerts in partnership with Warner Bros. Consumer Products presented the Polar Express in concert, being symphony hall showings of the movie backed by a live symphony orchestra and choir, 47. The Polar Express premiered at the 40th Chicago International Film Festival on October 21, 2004, 52. It opened on November 7 and went into wide distribution on November 10. In addition to standard theatrical 35mm format, a 3D version for IMAX was also released, generated from the same CGI digital models used for the 2D version, 53. Home media. 1 year after theatrical release, the film was released on DVD in widescreen and full-screen versions as single and two-disc special editions, with bonus features, as well as on VHS, on November 22, 2005, 55. It was released on HD DVD with bonus features in 2006 and on Blu-ray with bonus features on October 30, 2007. Both presented in the original widescreen aspect ratio. It was also released in Anaglyph 3D Blu-ray and DVD on October 28, 2008, labeled as The Polar Express, presented in 3D. This version includes an Anaglyph version of the film and the original theatrical presentation. The film was later released to Blu-ray 3D on November 16, 2010, and to Ultra HD Blu-ray on November 1, 2022. Reception. Box office. The film opened in second place behind The Incredibles, earning $23.3 million from approximately 7,000 screens at 3,650 theaters, for a per-theater average of $6,390 and a per-screen average of $3,332 in its opening weekend. It also brought in a total of $30.6 million since its Wednesday launch. The weekend total also included $2.1 million from 59 IMAX theaters, for an IMAX theater average of $35,593, and had a $3 million take since Wednesday, 56. According to President Dan Fellman, Titanic had put a different spin on the numbers for the Polar Express. Among holiday movies, The Santa Claus 2 opened in 2002 to $29 million and grossed $140 million, while Alf debuted the next year at $31 million on its way to a $175 million take. The studio had high hopes for the movie, particularly since Zemeckis and Hanks had a history of success with Forrest Gump and Cast Away, 57. By comparison, from the weekend the previous year, the top 12 movies had taken in $136.1 million, down to 5% following the debuts of The Matrix Revolutions, Brother Bear, and Alf, 58. Since Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was released in 2001, Warner Brothers had released 10 major films and all of them had dropped off at least 36% in their second weekend, but only 7 dropped off at least 49%. Not one of them had a lower 3-day opening weekend total gross as the Polar Express itself. The overseas prospects for the film were not especially encouraging, even though The Last Samurai went on to make a considerable sum of money across the globe and was prematurely labeled a flop by the media, 59. In its second weekend, The Polar Express dropped to 33%, and gross in $15.7 million. Averaging $4,293 from 3,650 venues and boosting the 12-day cumulative gross to $51.5 million. In its third weekend, which was Thanksgiving weekend, the film increased by 24%, earning $19.4 million, averaging $5,312 from 3,650 venues and raising the 19-day cumulative gross to $81.50 million, 61, with a total gross of $71 million. The Polar Express would hold the record for having the highest IMAX gross of any film until it was taken by Avatar 5 years later in 2009, 62. The film has made $189,528,738 in North America and $128,697,779 overseas for a total worldwide gross of $318,226,517, including all re-releases. 6. Critical response. The Polar Express received divisive reviews from critics upon release, 63, 64, with some calling it an instant Christmas classic, and others criticizing the characters as lifeless zombies. 65, 66. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 55% of 210 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.40 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, though the movie is visually stunning overall, the animation for the human characters isn't lifelike enough, and the story is padded. 67. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 61 out of 100, based on 36 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 68. The Independent reported in 2011 that the film is now seen by many as a classic. 69. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film a rare average grade of A+, on an A+ to F scale. 70. Roger Ebert gave the film his highest rating of 4 stars, writing of its deeper, shivery tone, instead of the mindless jolliness of the usual Christmas movie, and the haunting, magical quality. Acknowledging comments by other reviewers, Ebert said, "It's a little creepy. Not creepy in an unpleasant way, but in that sneaky, teasing way that lets you know eerie things could happen. This one creates a world of its own, like The Wizard of Oz or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, in which the wise child does not feel too complacent." 71. Richard Roeper and Mick LaSalle also gave highly positive reviews to the film, with the former saying that it remains true to the book, right down to the bittersweet final image, citation needed, and the latter giving it his highest rating of 5 stars, calling it an enchanting, beautiful and brilliantly imagined film that constitutes a technological breakthrough. Doc. 72. James Berardinelli gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, stating that it is a delightful tale guaranteed to enthrall viewers of all ages, and ranked it as the 10th best film of 2004, tying with The Incredibles. 73. Ian Nathan of Empire gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, and said, "For all the fairylet wonder, some will rail at the idea of Back to the Future's director dabbling with such a schmaltzy tale. Cynics will sneeze in shock, children will cuddle up and dream along." 74. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian also gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, saying, "After a promising and distinctive start, a railway adventure to meet Santa runs off the rails." 75. The film's character animation was criticized by some critics for dipping into the uncanny valley. 76. 77. As it was thought to falter in mimicking realistic facial expressions and emotions. 78. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone gave the film 1 star out of 4, and called it a failed and lifeless experiment in which everything goes wrong. 79. Stephanie Zacharek of Salon gave the film 1.5 stars out of 5 and said, "I could probably have tolerated the incessant jitteriness of the Polar Express if the look of it didn't give me the creeps." 80. Jeff Pavir of the Toronto Star stated, "If I were a child, I'd have nightmares. Come to think of it, I did anyway." 81. Paul Clinton from CNN called it, at best disconcerting, and at worst, a wee bit horrifying. 82. Manola Dargis of the New York Times gave the film 1.5 stars out of 5 and wrote, "There's no way of knowing whether they drank the company Kool-Aid. Still, from the looks of the Polar Express it's clear that, together with Mr. Zemeckis, this talented gang has on some fundamental level lost touch with the human aspect of film." Robert Lee Zemeckis, born May 14, 1952, sometimes referred to as Bob Zemeckis, 2, is an American filmmaker known for directing and producing a range of successful and influential films that often blend cutting-edge visual effects with storytelling. He has received accolades such as 2 Academy Awards and a Golden Globe Award, as well as nominations for 5 British Academy Film Awards and a Daytime Emmy Award. As a child, Zemeckis loved television and was fascinated by his parents' 8mm film home movie camera. Starting off by filming family events like birthdays and holidays, he gradually began producing narrative films with his friends that incorporated stop-motion work and other visual effects. He remained an avid television viewer, about which he later said, "You hear so much about the problems with television, but I think that it saved my life." Television gave him his first glimpse of a world outside of his upbringing, specifically after he learned that film schools existed from an episode of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. 9. After seeing Bonnie and Clyde with his father. 10. He decided that he wanted to go to film school. His parents disapproved of the idea. He later clarified that they disapproved only in the sense that they were concerned, because this was the kind of dream that really was impossible for family and my friends in the world he grew up in. He said, "My parents would sit there and say, 'Don't you see where you come from? You can't be a movie director.' I guess maybe some of it I felt I had to do in spite of them, too." 9. Zemeckis first attended Northern Illinois University, NIU, in DeKalb, Illinois, and gained early experience in film as a film cutter for NBC News in Chicago during a summer break. 11. He also edited commercials in his home state. 12. He applied to transfer from NIU to the University of Southern California's USC School of Cinematic Arts in Los Angeles, where he went into the film school on the strength of an essay and a music video based on a Beatles song. After waiting to hear back from the university, he called them directly and was told he had been rejected because of his average grades. He gave an impassioned plea to the university official during the phone call, promising to go to summer school and improve his studies, and eventually convinced the school to accept him. Arriving at USC that fall, Zemeckis encountered a program that he later described as being made up of a bunch of hippies, and considered an embarrassment by the university. The classes were difficult, with professors constantly stressing how hard the film industry was. Zemeckis remembered not being much fazed by this, citing the healthy cynicism that had been grown into him from his Chicago upbringing. 9. He met a fellow student, writer Bob Dale, who later recalled, "The graduate students at USC had this veneer of intellectualism, so Bob and I gravitated toward one another because we wanted to make Hollywood movies. We weren't interested in the French New Wave. We were interested in Clint Eastwood and James Bond and Walt Disney, because that's how we grew up." 13. Zemeckis graduated from USC in 1973. 14. And he and Gale co-wrote the unproduced screenplays Tanked and Bordello of Blood, which they pitched to John Milius, the latter of which was later developed into a film that was released in 1996. As a result of winning a Student Academy Award at USC for his film A Field of Honor. 18. Zemeckis came to the attention of Steven Spielberg. Spielberg said, "He barged right past my secretary and sat me down and showed me this student film, and I thought it was spectacular, with police cars and a riot, all dubbed to Elmer Bernstein's score for The Great Escape." Spielberg became Zemeckis' mentor and executive produced his first two films, both of which Gale and Zemeckis co-wrote. Spielberg produced I Wanna Hold Your Hand, 1978, starring Nancy Allen, and Used Cars, 1980, starring Kurt Russell. Both were critical, but not commercial, successes. I Wanna Hold Your Hand was the first of several Zemeckis films to incorporate historic figures and celebrities into his movies. He used archival footage and doubles to simulate the presence of the Beatles. After the failure of his first two films, and the Spielberg-directed 1941-1979, written by Dale and Zemeckis, the pair gained a reputation for writing scripts that everyone thought were great, but somehow didn't translate into movies people wanted to see. 13. As a result of his reputation within the industry, Zemeckis had trouble finding work in the early 1980s, though he and Gale kept busy. They wrote scripts for other directors, including Carpool for Brian De Palma and Growing Up for Spielberg. Neither ended up getting made. Another Zemeckis-Gale project, Back to the Future, about a teenager who travels back in time to the 1950s, was turned down by every major studio. 19. The director was jobless until Michael Douglas hired him in 1984 to direct Romancing the Stone, a romantic adventure starring Douglas and Kathleen Turner. Stone was expected to flop, to the point that, after viewing a rough cut of the film, the producers of the then-in-the-works Cocoon fired Zemeckis as director. 19. But the film became a sleeper hit. While working on Romancing the Stone, Zemeckis met composer Alan Silvestri, who has scored all his subsequent pictures. After Romancing the Stone, Zemeckis had the clout to direct his time-traveling screenplay. Starring Michael J. Fox, Lea Thompson, Crispin Glover, and Christopher Lloyd, the 1985 film was wildly successful upon its release and was followed by two sequels, released as Back to the Future Part 2 in 1989 and Back to the Future Part 3 in 1990. Before the Back to the Future sequels were released, Zemeckis collaborated with Disney and directed another film, the madcap 1940s set mystery Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which combined live action and traditional animation. Its $70 million budget made it one of the most expensive films made up to that point. The film was both a financial and critical success and won 3 Academy Awards. In 1990, Zemeckis commented, when asked if he would want to make non-comedies, I would like to be able to do everything. Just now, though, I'm too restless to do anything that's not really zany. In 1992, Zemeckis directed the black comedy Death Becomes Her, starring Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, and Bruce Willis. Although his next film would have some comedic elements, it was Zemeckis' first with dramatic elements and was also his biggest commercial success to date, Forrest Gump. Starring Tom Hanks in the title role, Forrest Gump tells the story of a man with a low IQ who unwittingly participates in some of the major events of the 20th century, falls in love, and interacts with several major historical figures in the process. The film grossed $677 million worldwide and became the top-grossing American film of 1994. It won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Hanks, and Best Director for Zemeckis. From this point, Hanks and Zemeckis became frequent collaborators. In 1997, Zemeckis directed Contact, a long-gestating project based on Carl Sagan's 1985 novel of the same name. The film centers on Eleanor Arroway, Jodie Foster, who believes she has made contact with extraterrestrials. In the early 1990s, he founded Southside Amusement Company, which later became Image Movers. During this same time period, Zemeckis was an executive producer of HBO's Tales from the Crypt, 1989 to 1996, and directed 3 episodes. In 1999, Zemeckis donated $5 million towards the Robert Zemeckis Center for Digital Arts at USC, a 35,000 square foot, 3,300 square meters, center. When the center opened in March 2001, Zemeckis spoke in a panel about the future of film, alongside friends Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Of those, including Spielberg, who clung to celluloid and disparaged the idea of shooting digitally, Zemeckis said, "These guys are the same ones who have been saying that LPs sound better than CDs. You can argue that until you're blue in the face, but I don't know anyone who's still buying vinyl." The film, as we have traditionally thought of it, is going to be different. But the continuum is man's desire to tell stories around the campfire. The only thing that keeps changing is the campfire. 25. The Robert Zemeckis Center currently hosts many film school classes, much of the interactive media division, and Trojan Vision, USC's student television station, which has been voted the #1 college television station in the country. In 1996, Zemeckis had begun developing a project titled The Castaway with Tom Hanks and writer William Broyles Jr. The story, inspired by Robinson Crusoe, is about a man who becomes stranded on a tropical island and undergoes a profound physical and spiritual change. 26. While working on The Castaway, Zemeckis also became attached to a Hitchcockian thriller titled What Lies Beneath, the story of a married couple experiencing an extreme case of empty nest syndrome that was based on an idea by Steven Spielberg. 27. Because Hanks's character needed to undergo a dramatic weight loss over the course of The Castaway, retitled Castaway for release, Zemeckis decided that the only way to retain the same crew while Hanks lost the weight was to shoot What Lies Beneath in between. He shot the first part of Castaway in early 1999, and shot What Lies Beneath in fall 1999, completing work on the former in early 2000. 27. Zemeckis later quipped, when asked about shooting 2 films back-to-back, "I wouldn't recommend it to anyone." 26. What Lies Beneath, starring Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer, was released in July 2000 to mixed reviews, but did well at the box office, grossing over $155 million domestically. Castaway, starring Hanks and Twister actress Helen Hunt, was released that December and grossed $233 million domestically. Wink with a frown. 28. Hanks received a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Actor for his portrayal of Chuck Nolan. 2004, present, career fluctuations. In 2004, Zemeckis recollaborated with Hanks for The Polar Express, based on Chris Van Allsburg's children's book of the same name. The Polar Express utilized the computer animation technique known as motion capture, where the movements of the actors are captured digitally and used as the basis for the animated characters. As the first film to use motion capture, The Polar Express caused the New York Times to write that, whatever critics and audiences make of this movie, from a technical perspective it could mark a turning point in the gradual transition from an analog to a digital cinema. 29. Zemeckis served as an executive producer for Monster House, 2006, a family-friendly horror comedy film that used motion capture. 30. Zemeckis' star on Walk of Fame, Hollywood, LA. In February 2007, Zemeckis and Walt Disney Studios chairman Dick Cook announced plans for a new motion capture film company devoted to CGI-created, 3D movies. 31. The company, Image Movers Digital, created films using the motion capture technology, with Zemeckis directing most of the projects which Disney distributed and marketed worldwide. Zemeckis used the motion capture technology in his film, Beowulf, to retell the Anglo-Saxon epic poem of the same name. It featured Ray Winstone, Angelina Jolie, and Anthony Hopkins. Neil Gaiman, who co-wrote the adaptation with Roger Avery, described the film as a cheerfully violent and strange take on the Beowulf legend. 32. The film was released on November 16, 2007, to mostly positive reviews and grossed $196 million worldwide. In July 2007, Variety announced that Zemeckis had written a screenplay for A Christmas Carol, based on Charles Dickens's 1843 short story of the same name, with plans to use motion capture and release it under the aegis of Image Movers Digital. Zemeckis wrote the script with Jim Carrey in mind, and Carrey agreed to play a multitude of roles in the film, including Ebenezer Scrooge as a young, middle-aged, and old man, and the three ghosts who haunt Scrooge. 33. The film began production in February 2008 and was released on November 6, 2009, to mixed reviews. 34. And grossed $325 million at the box office. Actor Gary Oldman also appeared in the film. 35. Zemeckis is an avid supporter of 3D digital cinema and has stated that since the 3D presentations of Beowulf, all of his future films would be done in 3D using digital motion capture. He has reportedly backed away from that statement and said that the decision to use 3D will be on a film-by-film basis, citation needed. On August 19, 2009, it was reported that Zemeckis and his company were in talks with Apple Corps Limited to remake the animated film Yellow Submarine utilizing motion capture. However, on March 12, 2010, with Zemeckis' biggest Disney ally, former chairman Dick Cook, gone, and amid drastic cost-cutting by the new management team, Disney announced that it was ending its relationship with Image Movers Digital. 36. The studio's final film, 2011 Zemeckis-produced Mars Needs Moms, was the second-worst box office failure in history, with a net loss of roughly $130 million. Zemeckis made his comeback to live-action filmmaking with Flight, a 2012 drama for Paramount, starring Denzel Washington. On January 31, 2014, it was announced that a stage musical adaptation of Zemeckis' first Back to the Future film was in production. 37. The show would be co-written by original writers Robert Zemeckis and Bob Dale. 38. According to Gale, the musical would be true to the spirit of the film without being a slavish remake. 39. Zemeckis with his wife Leslie in January 2013. In August 2008, IGN revealed in an interview with Philippe Petit that Zemeckis was working with Petit to turn Petit's memoir To Reach the Clouds into a feature film. 40. In 2015, he directed The Walk, about Philippe Petit, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and his ambition to tightrope walk between the towers of New York City's World Trade Center. Paramount Pictures and New Regency announced in February 2015 that Zemeckis would direct Brad Pitt in Allied, a romantic thriller set during World War II. 41. The film was released on November 23, 2016. Next, Zemeckis directed the fantasy drama Welcome to Marwen, starring Steve Carell, which was released in December 2018 to mixed reviews and flopped at the box office. 42. Zemeckis' film The Witches, an adaptation of the Roald Dahl novel of the same name, premiered on October 22, 2020, on HBO Max, also to mixed reviews. 43. On October 18, 2019, it was announced that Zemeckis was in talks to direct Disney's live-action adaptation of Pinocchio. 44. Zemeckis was officially announced as the film's director and co-writer of the script in January 2020. 45. In addition, Tom Hanks was reportedly announced as playing Geppetto in the film, marking the fourth collaboration with Hanks since Forrest Gump, Cast Away, and The Polar Express. 46. The film was later released as part of Disney Plus Day on Disney Plus on September 8, 2022. To highly negative reviews from critics. Pinocchio was nominated for 6 Razzies, including Worst Picture and Worst Director for Zemeckis, winning Worst Remake, losing to Blonde. Despite this, it also received a Visual Effects Society Award nomination for Outstanding Animated Character in a Photoreal Feature. On February 17, 2022, Zemeckis signed on to direct Here, an adaptation of the graphic novel by Richard Maguire, with Tom Hanks set to star and Forrest Gump screenwriter Eric Roth working on the screenplay with Zemeckis. 47. On May 11, it was announced that Robin Wright had been cast and that TriStar Pictures had acquired distribution rights for the United States, with Miramax handling international sales and production expected to begin in September 2022 for a theatrical release in 2024. 48. On October 31, 2024, Zemeckis, during an appearance on Josh Horowitz's Happy Sad Confused podcast to promote Here, hinted at his plans to produce and direct a film adaptation of the stage musical version of Back to the Future that would also serve as a remake of the original film. Universal has yet to greenlight the project after an initial rejection of Zemeckis' pitch to the studio. 49. Style and recognition. Zemeckis is regarded as an innovator in visual effects. His exploration of state-of-the-art visual effects includes the early use of computer graphics inserted into live-action footage in Back to the Future Part 2, 1989, and Forrest Gump, the insertion of hand-drawn animation into live-action footage in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the motion capture techniques seen in The Polar Express, 2004, Beowulf, 2007, A Christmas Carol, 2009, and Welcome to Marwen, 2018. He is known for his collaboration with composer Alan Silvestri, with whom he has worked since Romancing the Stone. David Thompson, a prominent film critic, wrote that no other contemporary director has used visual effects to more dramatic and narrative purpose. 3. Personal life. Zemeckis was married to actress Mary Ellen Trainor from 1980 until their divorce in 2000, and they had a son together named Alexander Francis. Citation needed. He described the marriage as difficult to balance with his career. 9. In 2001, he married actress Leslie Harder in Venice. 52, 53. They have 3 children together. They reside in Santa Barbara, California. 52. And own a villa in Tuscany which is located on the ruins of a 10th-century castle. Zemeckis has discussed sacrificing his personal life for his career over a long period of time, stating, "I won an Academy Award when I was 42 years old, but I paid for it with my 20s. That decade of my life from film school till 30 was nothing but work, nothing but absolute, driving work. I had no money. I had no life. 9. Zemeckis is a private pilot who has logged approximately 1,600 hours of flight time as of October 2012, 55, flying a Cirrus SR-22, 56. According to campaign donation records, Zemeckis has frequently contributed to Democratic politicians and PACs that support the interests of aircraft owners and pilots, family planning, and a group that advocates for women in Hollywood. He created the television series China Beach, 1988-91, and 6, 2017-18, and wrote such films as Apollo 13, 1995, Castaway, 2000, Planet of the Apes, 2001, Unfaithful, 2002, The Polar Express, 2004, Jarhead, 2005, and Flags of Our Fathers, 2006. His work on Apollo 13 earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Broyles co-founded Texas Monthly Magazine, too, and served as editor of Newsweek from 1982 to 1984. Early life. Broyles was born in Houston, Texas, the son of Elizabeth, née Bills, and William Dodson Broyles. 1. He was raised in Baytown, Texas, graduated from Robert E. Lee High School and attended Rice University, earning a BA degree in history in 1966. While at Rice, Broyles was an active member of the student body and a contributing editor to the student newspaper, the Rice Drescher. As early as 1966, Broyles was also contributing articles to the Houston Post. Broyles served as president of the Rice Student Association during the 1965 to 1966 academic year, and was awarded the Hugh Scott Cameron Award for Outstanding Community Service. He has remained a strong supporter of the university throughout his career, delivering the commencement speech in 1983, and receiving the Distinguished Alumni Award in 1993. After graduating from Rice, Broyles studied as a Marshall Scholar at Oxford University, where he earned an MA degree in politics, philosophy, and economics in 1968. While at Oxford, Broyles pursued his interests in both journalism and public service. He wrote political columns for the Oxford University magazine and contributed articles to The Economist magazine of London. He also spoke throughout England for the United States Information Service. He later worked briefly for Leo Kramer Incorporated, a Washington, D.C. social sciences consulting firm, as a consultant on model cities, manpower, and Vista training programs. Military career. In 1968, Broyles's career was put on hold when he enlisted into the United States Marine Corps. Between 1969 and 1971, he rose to the rank of first lieutenant and served in Vietnam, first as an infantry platoon commander, and later as an aide-de-camp to the assistant division commander, 1st Marine Division. Due to his educational background and experience, his assigned duties included social issues with an emphasis on the refugees in the Quang Nam province. Broyles received the Bronze Star and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry with Silver Star, citation needed. Broyles's experiences in Vietnam inspired two of his most critically acclaimed projects. In 1984, he was one of the first veterans to return to Vietnam, and his book Brothers in Arms, A Journey from War to Peace, recounts his visit and his impressions of the aftermath of war on himself and his fellow Marines, as well as on the country he fought against in battle. 3. In 1988, Broyles once again drew upon his memories in Vietnam when he co-created the award-winning television series, China Beach, a weekly drama for ABC about the doctors and nurses stationed at an American military base in Da Nang. Broyles also authored an article in Esquire, Why Men Love War, for journalist. Upon returning from Vietnam in 1971, Broyles picked up his professional career. He taught philosophy and political science at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis before returning to Texas as Chief Public Relations Officer for the Houston Independent School District. After a brief period of time in public service in Houston, Broyles was provided the opportunity to pursue his other primary interest, journalism. He became the founding editor of Texas Monthly magazine in 1972. Broyles's and Texas Monthly publisher Michael A. Levy's goal was to create a magazine of national quality in Texas. Within its first year, the publication won a National Magazine Award for Excellence, and during Broyles's tenure it quickly gained recognition as a writer's magazine, offering intelligent and entertaining articles on Texas life ranging from politics, culture, art, sports, the environment, social issues, and entertainment. The award-winning magazine continues today as an example of quality journalism with a regional focus and a national readership. In 1980, Broyles and business partners, including Michael Levy, purchased New West magazine from Rupert Murdoch. Broyles served as editor-in-chief of the magazine from 1980 to 1982, and saw it through its redesign and renaming as California. By 1982, Broyles's impressive track record in the magazine publishing world had caught the attention of Katharine Graham, who recruited him to serve as editor of Newsweek magazine, replacing Lester Bernstein. He held that position from 1982 to 1984, when he resigned to pursue other interests. During the next few years, Broyles made one more foray into the magazine publishing world, serving as editor-in-chief of Cable Guide, but he focused primarily on developing his writing career. In addition to Brothers in Arms, he wrote a three-act play titled Boot, about 3 soldiers in a bunker in Vietnam joined by a new recruit that they nicknamed Boot. The plot follows the 4 young men as they struggle to cope with the realities of war. Screenwriter. In 1988, Broyles found critical success with the television series China Beach. In addition to co-creating the show with John Sacret-Yun, Broyles also wrote or co-wrote several of the early episodes, and remained producer and creative consultant throughout the run of the show. In 1991, the Golden Globe-winning China Beach went off the air, but Broyles was well into production on his second television project, Undercover, a political espionage series following the adventures of husband and wife Secret Service agents, Dylan and Kate Delamico. The series was short-lived, and Broyles next adapted the Nigel Hamilton book, JFK, Reckless Youth, for a 1993 television miniseries of the same name starring Patrick Dempsey as the young future president. Also in 1993, Broyles turned his attention from television projects to writing feature films. He shares his first screenwriting credit with former Texas Monthly writer Al Reiner for Apollo 13. The film, based loosely on the book Lost Moon, co-authored by astronaut Jim Lovell and Jeffrey Kluger, was directed by Ron Howard. It was met with both critical and box office success, and Broyles and Reiner were nominated for the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. After Apollo 13, Broyles began work on Castaway, an original screenplay about a FedEx engineer stranded on a deserted island. Released in 2000, the film was produced by Tom Hanks, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and stars Hanks as the resilient Chuck Nolan. Apollo 13 and Castaway secured Broyles's place as an A-list Hollywood screenwriter. Other writing credits in motion pictures include Entrapment, 1999, Planet of the Apes, 2001, Unfaithful, 2002, The Polar Express, 2004, Jarhead, 2005, and Flags of Our Fathers, 2006. He also assisted in the screenplay of Saving Private Ryan, though he was uncredited. On Christmas Eve, a young boy, listening from his bed for the ringing sounds of Santa's sleigh, instead hears the sound of a train. He looks through the window to see it right outside his house. He sees a conductor who looks up at his window. He tiptoes downstairs and goes outside. The conductor explains that the train is called the Polar Express and is journeying to the North Pole. The boy then boards the train, which is filled with other children in their pajamas and nightgowns. They all sing carols and are served candies and hot chocolate by the train's staff. The Polar Express races north past towns and villages, through boreal forests, and over mountains, but the train never slows down. When it arrives at the North Pole, the conductor explains that Santa Claus will select one of them to receive the first gift of Christmas. The boy and the other children see thousands of elves gathered at the center of town waiting to send Santa Claus on his way. The boy is handpicked by Santa to receive the first gift of Christmas. Realizing he could choose anything in the world, the boy asks for a bell from Santa's sleigh. An elf cuts a bell from a reindeer's harness. The boy places the bell in the pocket of his robe, and all the children watch as Santa takes off into the night for his annual deliveries. As the train departs, the boy discovers that the bell had fallen through a hole in his pocket. The boy arrives home, the conductor wishing him a Merry Christmas as the train speeds away. On Christmas morning, his sister Sarah finds a small box for the boy behind the tree. The boy opens the box and discovers that it contains the bell, delivered by Santa along with a note explaining that he found it on the seat of his sleigh and suggests he fix the hole in his pocket. When the boy rings the bell, both he and his sister marvel at the beautiful sound. His parents, however, are unable to hear the bell and remark that it is broken. The book ends with the following line: "At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe." The Polar Express is a 2004 American animated film based on the book. Written, produced, and directed by Robert Zemeckis, the film features human characters animated using the live-action performance capture technique. The film stars Tom Hanks, Daryl Sabara, Nama Day, Jimmy Bennett, Michael Jeter, and Eddie Deezen. The film was first released in both conventional and IMAX 3D theaters November 10, 2004, and grossed $307 million worldwide. The Polar Express has inspired real-life train rides across the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom based on the book and film. 13. These train rides are hosted by a number of different railways, including the Grand Canyon Railway, the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad, the Texas State Railroad, the Steam Railroading Institute in Owasso, Michigan, the Valley Railroad in Connecticut, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad in Frostburg, Maryland, and others, beginning in 2016, the UK's Telford Steam Railway offered the Polar Express ride on a steam engine. 20. One of the most popular Polar Express train rides in the UK is at Churnet Valley Railway. Citation needed. Australia's Puffing Billy Railway and Bellarine Railway are also popular choices, according to Home. The round-trip journey to the North Pole commonly includes a live musical performance, hot cocoa and cookies, and Christmas characters such as Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus. At some locations, guests are invited to wear pajamas. Chris Van Allsburg, born June 18, 1949, is an American writer and illustrator of children's books. He has won 2 Caldecott Medals for U.S. Picture Book Illustration, for Jumanji, 1981, and The Polar Express, 1985, both of which he also wrote, and were later adapted as successful motion pictures. He was also a Caldecott runner-up in 1980 for The Garden of Abdul Ghassazi, 1, 2, for his contribution as a children's illustrator. He was a 1986 U.S. nominee for the biennial International Hans Christian Andersen Award, the highest international recognition for creators of children's books. 3. He received the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters from the University of Michigan in April. Van Allsburg was born on June 18, 1949, to a Dutch family in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the second child of Doris Christianen and Richard Van Allsburg. 4. He has an older sister named Karen, born in 1947. Warner Brothers Pictures is an American film studio and distribution arm of the Warner Brothers Motion Picture Group division of Warner Brothers Entertainment, both of which are owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. It is headquartered at the Warner Brothers Studios complex in Burbank, California. Animated films produced by Warner Brothers Pictures Animation are also released under the studio banner. 3. The studio was founded on April 4, 1923, by the brothers Harry Warner, Albert Warner, Sam Warner, and Jack Al Warner. In addition to producing its own films, the studio handles filmmaking operations, theatrical distribution, marketing, and promotion for films produced and released by other Warner Brothers labels. These labels include Warner Brothers Pictures Animation, New Line Cinema, and Castle Rock Entertainment, as well as various third-party producers. Warner Brothers Pictures is currently one of 4 live-action film studios within the Warner Brothers Motion Picture Group, the others being New Line Cinema, Castle Rock Entertainment, and Spyglass Media Group, with a minority stake. The most commercially successful film franchises from Warner Brothers include Harry Potter, DC Universe, formerly DC Extended Universe, The Lord of the Rings, and Monsterverse. Barbie is the studio's highest-grossing film worldwide with $1.4 billion in revenue. The logo, designed by Saul Bass, was used from 1972 until 1984. It is currently used by the separately spun-off Warner Music Group. Although movie audiences had shrunk, Warner's new management believed in the drawing power of stars, signing co-production deals with several of the biggest names of the day, including Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Barbra Streisand, and Clint Eastwood, carrying the studio successfully through the 1970s and 1980s. Its hits in the early 1970s included those starring the aforementioned actors, along with comedian Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, The Exorcist, John Borman's Deliverance, and the Martin Scorsese productions Mean Streets and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Warner Brothers also made major profits on films and television shows built around the characters of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash, owned by Warner Brothers subsidiary DC Comics. The 1970s also saw Warner Brothers Records become one of the major record labels worldwide, and that company gained sister labels in Elektra Records and Atlantic Records. In 1971, Filmation and Warner Brothers entered into an agreement to produce and distribute cartoons for film and television, with its television subsidiary handling worldwide television rights. 21. In late 1973, Warner Brothers announced that it had partnered with 20th Century Fox to co-produce a single film, producer Owen Allen's The Towering Inferno. 22. Both studios found themselves owning the rights to books about burning skyscrapers. Warner was attempting to adapt Thomas N. Scotia and Frank M. Robinson's The Glass Inferno, and Fox was preparing an adaptation of Richard Martin Stern's The Tower. Allen insisted on a meeting with the heads of both studios and announced that as Fox was already in the lead with their property, it would be preferable to lump the two together as a single film, with Fox owning domestic rights and Warner Brothers handling the film's foreign distribution. The resulting partnership resulted in the second highest grossing film of 1974, turning profits for both studios, and influence in future co-productions between major studios. Although Allen would make further films for Warner Brothers, he would not repeat the success he had with The Towering Inferno. Abandoning parking lots and funeral homes, the refocused Kinney renamed itself in honor of its best-known holding, Warner Communications. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Warner Communications branched out into other business, such as video game company Atari Incorporated in 1976, and later the Six Flags theme parks. In 1972, in a cost-cutting move, Warner and Columbia formed the third company called the Burbank Studios, TBS. 23. They would share the Warner lot in Burbank. 23. Both studios technically became production entities, giving TBS day-to-day responsibility for studio grounds and upkeep. 23. The Columbia Ranch, about a mile north of Warner's lot, was part of the deal. 23. The Warner-Columbia relationship was acrimonious, but the reluctance of both studios to approve or spend money on capital upgrades that might only help the other did have the unintended consequence of preserving the Warner lot's primary function as a filmmaking facility while it produced relatively little during the 1970s and 1980s. 23. One famous film that was filmed at the Warner lot during this era was Blade Runner, 1982, by director Ridley Scott. 24. Most films produced after 1968 were filmed on location after the failure of Camelot was partially attributed to the fact it was set in England but obviously filmed in Burbank. 23. With control over its own lot tied up in TBS, Warner ultimately retained a significant portion of its backlit. 23. While Fox sold its backlit to create Century City, Universal turned part of its backlit into a theme park and shopping center, and Disney replaced its backlit with office buildings and moved its animation department to an industrial park in Glendale. In 1995, Warner Brothers and television station owner Tribune Company of Chicago launched the WB television network, seeking a large share of the niche market of teenage viewers. The WB's early programming included an abundance of teenage fare, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Smallville, Dawson's Creek, and One Tree Hill. Two dramas produced by Spelling Television, Seventh Heaven and Charmed, helped bring the WB into the spotlight. Charmed lasted 8 seasons, becoming the longest-running drama with female leads. Seventh Heaven ran for 11 seasons and was the longest-running family drama and longest-running show for the network. In 2006, Warner Brothers and CBS Corporation decided to close the WB and CBS's UPN and jointly launch the CW television network. On October 10, 1996, Time Warner acquired Turner Broadcasting System, which allowed Warner Brothers to regain the rights to their pre-1950, 27, 28 film library. 29. The Turner deal also brought two separate film companies, New Line Cinema and Castle Rock Entertainment, both of which were integrated into Warner Brothers Entertainment. 30. The Turner deal also gave Time Warner access to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM's pre-May 1986 library and the pre-1991 libraries of animation studios Hanna-Barbera and Ruby Spears. 31. 32. The merger brought projects such as City of Angels and You've Got Mail into the studio. 33. Later that year, Warner Brothers partnered with Polygram Filmed Entertainment to distribute various movies produced by Castle Rock Entertainment. 34. Also that same year, Bruce Berman left Warner Brothers to begin Plan B Entertainment, then he subsequently headed Village Roadshow Pictures with a deal at the studio. 35. In 1998, Time Warner Entertainment sold Six Flags to Premier Parks. 36. The takeover of Time Warner Entertainment in 2001 by then high-flying America Online, AOL, did not prove a good match, and following the collapse in .com stocks, the AOL element was banished from the corporate name. In 1998, Warner Bros. Celebrated its 75th anniversary. In 1999, Terry Semel and Robert Daly resigned as studio heads after a career with 13 Oscar-nominated films. Daly and Semel were said to have popularized the modern model of partner financing and profit sharing for film production. In mid-1999, Alan F. Horn and Barry Meyer replaced Daly and Semel as new studio heads, in which the studio had continued success in movies, television shows, cartoons, that the previous studio heads had for the studio. In late 2003, Time Warner reorganized Warner Bros. Assets under Warner Bros. Entertainment Incorporated, in an effort to distinguish the film studio from its then sister record label, which since became Warner Records in May 2019, and Warner Music Group. The studio division was incorporated as Warner Bros. Pictures on March 3, 2003, to diversify film subjects and expand audiences for their film releases. 37, the company became part of the Warner Bros. Pictures Group, which was established in 2008, and Jeff Robinoff was appointed the first president of the company. 38. In the late 1990s, Warner Bros. Obtained rights to the Harry Potter novels and released feature film adaptations of the first in 2001. Subsequently, they released the second film in 2002, the third in June 2004, the fourth in November 2005, the fifth in July 2007, and the sixth in July 2009. 39, the seventh, and at that time, final, book was released as two movies, Deathly Hallows, Part 1 in November 2010 and Deathly Hallows, Part 2 in July 2011. From 2006, Warner Bros. Operated a joint venture with China Film Group Corporation and HG to form Warner China Film HG to produce films in Hong Kong and China, including Connected, a remake of the 2004 thriller film Cellular. Warner Bros. Played a large part in the discontinuation of the HD DVD format. On January 4, 2008, Warner Bros. Announced that they would drop support of HD DVD in favor of Blu-ray discs. 40 HD DVDs continued to be released through May 2008, but only following Blu-ray and DVD releases. Warner Bros.' Harry Potter film series was the worldwide highest-grossing film series of all time without adjusting for inflation. Its Batman film series was one of only two series to have two entries earn more than $1 billion worldwide. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2 was Warner Bros.' highest-grossing movie ever, surpassing The Dark Knight, 41. However, the Harry Potter movies have produced a net loss due to Hollywood accounting. 42. IMAX Corporation signed with Warner Bros. Pictures in April 2010 to release as many as 20 giant format films through 2013. 43. In May 2011, Warner Bros. Home Entertainment Group acquired Flixster. 44, a movie discovery application company. The acquisition also includes Rotten Tomatoes, a movie review aggregator. 45. On March 6, 2013, Time Warner announced plans to spin off Time Incorporated into a publicly traded company. 46. Time Warner's chairman/CEO Jeff Bewkes said that the split would allow Time Warner to focus entirely on its television and film businesses, and Time Incorporated to focus on its core print media businesses. 47. It was announced in May 2014 that Time Incorporated would become a publicly traded company on June 6 of that year. 48. The spin-off was completed on June 9, 2014. 49. On October 21, 2014, Warner Bros. Created a short-form digital unit, Blue Ribbon Content, under Warner Brothers Animation and Warner Digital Series President Sam Register, 50, Warner Brothers Digital Networks announced its acquisition of online video company Machinima Incorporated on November 17, 2016, 51. As of 2015, Warner Brothers is one of only 3 studios to have released a pair of billion-dollar films in the same year, along with Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures and Universal Studios. The distinction was achieved in 2012 with The Dark Knight Rises and The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, 52, 53, 54. As of 2016, Disney is the only studio to cross $1 billion at the domestic box office every year since 2055. In 2017, longtime New Line executive Toby Emmerich joined as president of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, 56. In January 2018, he was promoted to chairman, 57, 58. On October 23, 2018, it was announced that Lynn Frank, president of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, would be leaving the company to pursue new opportunities, 59. In June 2019, Warner Brothers Pictures signed an agreement with SF Studios to have their films distributed in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland, 60. As part of that NT/Warner Media. In June 2018, Warner Brothers' parent company Time Warner was acquired by U.S. telecom company AT&T and renamed Warner Media, the former Time Incorporated properties having been sold off to new owners, 61. On October 16, 2018, Warner Media shut down Drama Fever, affecting 20% of Warner Brothers Digital Network staff, 62. On March 4, 2019, Warner Media announced a planned reorganization that would break up the Turner Broadcasting System by moving Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, Boomerang, their respective production studios, Cartoon Network Studios and Williams Street, as well as Turner Classic Movies and Otter Media, directly under Warner Brothers. Turner's remaining television services and joint ventures would be divided into Warner Media Entertainment and Warner Media News and Sports respectively. Aside from Otter Media, these assets operate under a newly formed Global Kids and Young Adults Division, 63, were named on April 7, 2020, to Warner Brothers Global Kids, Young Adults, and Classics, 64. On May 31, 2019, Otter Media was transferred from Warner Brothers to Warner Media Entertainment to oversee the development of HBO Max, a new streaming service that would feature content from HBO and Warner Media brands. 65. Thomas Skeen resigned as president of cable network Freeform to become the president of the Global Kids, Young Adults, and Classics Division on July 1, 2020, until May 11, 2022, when Michael Owleen took over as the current president of the Cartoon Network, Inc., 66. These are the 2 versions of Pentagram's 2019 Warner Brothers Shield logo, which are used from 2019 to 2023. One is the regular logo on the left, and the other is the dimensional version on the right, 67. On November 13, 2019, Warner Brothers unveiled an updated iteration of its Shield logo by Pentagram in anticipation of the company's upcoming centennial, which features a streamlined appearance designed to make it better suited for multi-platform usage and iterations. The company also commissioned a new corporate typeface that is modeled upon the WB lettering, 68, 69. Warner Brothers and HBO Max announced the Warner Max Film label on February 5, 2020, which was to produce 8 to 10 mid-budget movies per year for the streaming service starting in 2020, 70. However, the label was ultimately discontinued in October 2020 as part of a consolidation of the Warner Brothers Pictures Group, 71, 72, 73. COVID-19 pandemic. Like most other film distributors, Warner Bros. Pictures struggled with releasing films during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic because of restrictions on opening theaters. After postponing several films planned for 2020 into 2021, Warner Bros. Announced in December 2020 that they would take an unusual approach, planning their full slate of 2021 films for both theatrical release and simultaneous one-month availability on the HBO Max streaming service. This approach was similar to the studio's release of Wonder Woman 1984 that month. After 1 month, these films would still be shown in theaters and would later become available via home media on typical release schedules. 74. The inclusion of streaming, dubbed Project Popcorn, was criticized by production companies, directors, and actors. The criticism arose because Warner Bros. Pictures announced the streaming plan without informing these groups in advance, and because of concerns about lower payouts due to streaming auctions. 75. These criticisms led Warner Bros. Pictures to alter compensation rates for the affected films by January 2021 in order to provide larger payouts to their casts and crews. 76. In March 2021, Warner Bros. Announced that they would discontinue the model of same-day HBO Max and theatrical release in 2022. Instead, they would use a 45-day theatrical exclusivity window. 77. This change is part of an agreement the studio reached with SimWorld, who operates Regal Cinemas. 78. In February 2022, Village Roadshow Pictures, a co-financier of The Matrix Resurrections, began a lawsuit against Warner Bros. Over the hybrid release of the sci-fi sequel. Like all of Warner Bros.' 2021 films, the fourth Matrix film was given a simultaneous release on both HBO Max and in theaters due to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to a complaint filed by Village Roadshow, the decision ruined any December box office hopes. 79. In May of that same year, Village Roadshow agreed to arbitration with Warner Bros. Over the release of The Matrix Resurrections. 80. As part of Warner Bros. Discovery. Alternate version of the 2023 Warner Bros. Pictures logo without the banner, used as the on-screen variant in only a few films. Although the Lake 2023 on-screen logo has been used since December 6, 2023, this logo remains in use for corporate and small-scale purposes. It is also the official current logo of Warner Bros. Pictures' parent company, Warner Bros. Entertainment, and its parent company, Warner Bros. Discovery. 81. On April 8, 2022, AT&T divested Warner Media to its shareholders, which in turn merged with Discovery Incorporated to form Warner Bros. Discovery. The new company is led by Discovery's CEO David Zaslav. 82, 83, 84, 85. Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD, is the legal successor to the company formerly known as Discovery Incorporated before its acquisition of Warner Media in April 2022. On June 1, 2022, WBD announced several changes. Toby Emmerich would step down as head of the Warner Bros. Pictures Group after a transition period. The company would be divided into 3 units: Warner Bros. Pictures/New Line Cinema, DC Films, and Warner Animation Group. Former MGM executives Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdy would serve as co-chairs of Warner Bros. Pictures. They would also temporarily oversee the other 2 divisions until new executives were hired. Emmerich would start his own production company. He would also enter into a 5-year distribution and funding agreement with Warner Bros. Pictures. 86, 87. On June 8, COO Carolyn Blackwood announced that she was stepping down as well. 88. Steve Spiro returned as President of Business Affairs for Warner Bros. In June 2022. DeLuca and Abdy took over from Emmerich in July 2022. Former President Alan Horn was appointed as a consultant for WBD President David Zaslav, working with DeLuca and Abdi, 89. In August 2022, Warner Bros. Pictures entered into a multi-year contract to distribute MGM films outside the United States, including on home entertainment. This contract included joint participation by both companies in marketing, advertising, publicity, film distribution, and relationship with exhibitors for future MGM titles. 90. That same month, the studio's plans for film distribution were revised, with increased reliance on theatrical releases rather than releases on HBO Max only. 91. Walter Hamada, the president of DC Films, stepped down on October 19, 2022. 92. President of Production and Development Courtney Valenti departed on October 28 and was replaced by Jesse Ehrman. 93. 94. On June 9, 2023, the Warner Bros. Pictures Group was renamed as the Warner Bros. Motion Picture Group. 95. In March 2022, Warner Bros. soft launched a campaign for its centennial in 2023, with the tagline, 100 Years of Storytelling. In December 2022, the Centennial campaign was launched with the new tagline, Celebrating Every Story, which will include commemorative initiatives across all Warner Bros. Divisions and properties. 96. 97. The campaign utilizes a commemorative logo featuring an updated shield by Chermaif and Geismar and Haviv, first introduced in the Warner Bros. Discovery logo, which was revised with a softer appearance, thicker outlines, and a return to using blue and gold as its corporate colors, if not rendered in different colors or textures to suit a specific property. The updated shield is used as a secondary logo, and is used concurrently with the 2019 logo, which is the main and primary logo, since May 2023. 98. As part of the 100th anniversary campaign, the studio released new short features for the Max streaming service that recreates Warner Bros. Classics with a focus on diversity. 99. In November 2022, James Gunn and Peter Safran became the co-chairpersons and CEOs of DC Films, which was renamed to DC Studios. The studio also became an independent division of Warner Bros. Discovery. 100. Proposed acquisition by Netflix and Comcast. Further information, proposed acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery. In late 2025, Netflix, Inc. announced that it intends to purchase Warner Bros. For $82.70 billion. 101. The acquisition is expected to be completed after the previously announced separation of WBD's Global Networks division, Discovery Global, into a new publicly traded company in the third quarter of 2026. 102. Paramount, Skydance, and Comcast also emerged as contenders and submitted rival bids by November 20, 2025. After a second round of bidding, Netflix was widely seen as the frontrunner by December 4, 2025. 103. 104. Executive Management. Chairman of the Board. Robert A. Daly, 1980 to 1999. Barry Meyer, 1999 to 2013. Kevin Tsujihara, 2013 to 2019. And Sarnoff, 2019 to 2022. Vice Chairman. Edward A. Romano, 1994 to 2016. Presidents. Terry Semel, 1994 to 1999. Chief Executive Officers. Robert A. Daly, 1980 to 1999. Barry Meyer, 1999 to 2013. Kevin Tsujihara, 2013 to 2019. And Sarnoff, 2019 to 2022. Chief Operating Officers. Terry Semel, 1982 to 1994. Barry Meyer, 1994 to 1999. International arrangements. Film production. Netherlands. In 1997, Warner Brothers signed an agreement with children's television producer Bernie Bos and his production company Bos Brothers for the Benelux distribution rights of his films, starting with The Flying Lift Boy, an adventure film based on the children's book by Annie M. G. Schmidt. 105. The film became the most visited Dutch film of 1998, which led to a partnership where Warner distributed films from the company such as Miss Nino's, Tow Truck Pluck and Winky's Horse. Bos Brothers ended the partnership in 2011. 106. Japan. In July 1998, Toshiba, Warner Brothers and Nippon Television launched production joint venture Tawani Corp. JP. 107, with the goal to produce 2 Japanese films per year, starting with Sequoia, Slayer of Demons, JP, in 2000. 108. However, after producing 4 features, the company filed for bankruptcy after the box office failure of Cutie Honey in 2004. India. In 2025, Warner Brothers Pictures signed a 5-film agreement with Banashali Studios Limited and JOAT Films to co-create adaptations of Warner Brothers titles for the Indian market. 109. Film distribution. From 1971 until the end of 1987, Warner Brothers' international distribution operations were a joint venture with Columbia Pictures. In some countries, this joint venture distributed films from other companies, such as EMI Films and Canon Films in the United Kingdom. Warner Brothers ended the venture in 1988. On May 4, 1987, the Walt Disney Company signed a theatrical distribution agreement with Warner Brothers International for the release of Disney and Touchstone films in overseas markets, with Disney retaining full control of all distribution and marketing decisions on their product. 110. In 1992, Disney opted to end their joint venture with Warner Brothers to start autonomously distributing their films in the aforementioned markets. In 2001, Warner Brothers began a partnership with German production company X Filme Creative Pool and its distribution arm X Verli AG, where they would co-distribute their releases with the studio. 111. The partnership was later extended in 2004 with 20 additional features. 112. Before the 2008 merger, Warner Brothers already handled distribution of then-sister companies' New Line Cinema titles in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Eastern Europe, Russia and select territories in Latin America and Asia. 113. 114. On February 6, 2014, Columbia TriStar Warner Filmes de Portugal, the joint venture with Sony Pictures, which distributed both companies' films in Portugal, announced that it would close its doors on March 31, 2014. 115. Nous Audiovisuais handles distribution of Warner Brothers films in Portugal since then, while the distribution duties for Sony Pictures films in the country were taken over by Big Picture Films. Before the Disney merger in 2019, Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox had a strategic partnership to distribute both of their films theatrically in key territories in Southeast Asia. 116, and the Benelux. The earliest known joint venture of the two companies was established in 1970 in Singapore. 117. In the Benelux, Warner distributed Fox titles in the Netherlands while Fox handled distribution of Warner Brothers titles in Belgium from 2008 until 2019, when Disney took over distribution duties in July. 118. 119. Since January 1, 2021, Warner Brothers films are distributed through Universal Pictures in Hong Kong, Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand, citing Warner Media's closure of its Hong Kong theatrical office, with the Universal Pictures International logo appearing before the Warner Brothers Pictures logo, starting with the Batman. 120. 121, 122. As of 2024, Warner Bros. Currently handles theatrical distribution of Universal Pictures films in Brazil, India, and the Philippines. 123, 124, 125. In August 2022, Warner Bros. Pictures entered into a multi-year deal for distributing MGM, later Amazon MGM Studios, films outside the United States, including on-home entertainment. The contract included joint participation of both companies for marketing, advertising, publicity, film distribution, and relationship with exhibitors for future MGM titles. 126. The deal was concluded in 2025 when Sony Pictures Releasing International took over international distribution of Amazon MGM titles beginning with After the Hunt. 127. As of 2025, Warner Bros. Had partnerships with local distribution companies to theatrically release local language and regionally acquired films such as Singapore-based Encore Films in Southeast Asia and India, Picture House Entertainment, unrelated to the previous sister studio of the same name, in the United Kingdom, and Piper Film in Italy. On September 17, 2025, Warner Bros. Pictures signed theatrical distribution deal with Toho Tao, with the Japanese distribution branch of Warner Bros. Pictures would be dissolved after the deal with Toho started in 2025 and 2026. 128, 129. Film Library. Main article, lists of Warner Bros. Films. Date 4, Warner Bros. Studios, looking south towards the water tower. Mergers and acquisitions have helped Warner Bros. To accumulate a diverse collection of films, cartoons, and television programs. As of 2022, Warner Bros. Owned more than 145,000 hours of programming, including 12,500 feature films and 2,400 television programs comprising more than 150,000 individual episodes. 130. Acquired libraries. For a more comprehensive list, see List of assets owned by Warner Bros. Discovery. Mergers and acquisitions have helped Warner Bros. Accumulate a diverse collection of films, cartoons, and television programs. As of 2022, Warner Bros. Owned more than 145,000 hours of programming, including 12,500 feature films and 2,400 television programs comprising more than tens of thousands of individual episodes. 131. In the aftermath of the 1948 antitrust suit, uncertain times led Warner Bros. In 1956 to sell most of its pre-1950, 132, 133, 134, 135 films and cartoons to Associated Artists Productions, AAP. In addition, AAP also obtained the Fleischer Studios and Famous Studios Popeye cartoons, originally from Paramount Pictures. 2 years later, AAP was sold to United Artists, UA, which owned the company until 1981, when Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, acquired United Artists. 136, 137. In 1982, during their independent years, Turner Broadcasting System acquired Brut Productions, the film production arm of France-based then-struggling personal care company Faberge Incorporated. 138. In 1986, Turner Broadcasting System acquired MGM. Finding itself in debt, Turner Entertainment kept the pre-May 1986 MGM film and television libraries and a small portion of the United Artists library, including the AAP library and North American rights to the RKO Radio Pictures library, while spinning off the rest of MGM. 139. In 1989, Warner Communications acquired Lorimer Telepictures Corporation. 140, 141. Lorimer's catalog included the Post, 1974 Library of Rankin/Bass Productions, and the post-1947 Library of Monogram Pictures/Allied Artists Pictures Corporation. In 1991, Turner Broadcasting System acquired animation studio Hanna-Barbera and the Ruby Spears Library from Great American Broadcasting, and years later, Turner Broadcasting System acquired Castle Rock Entertainment on December 22, 1993, 143, and New Line Cinema on January 28, 1994. 145. On October 10, 1996, Time Warner acquired Turner Broadcasting System, thus bringing Warner Brothers' pre-1950 library back home to the studio after 46 years. In addition, Warner Brothers owns pre-2010 libraries produced by Castle Rock Entertainment with few exceptions. In 2008, Time Warner integrated New Line Cinema into Warner Brothers Pictures. The Warner Brothers Archives. The University of Southern California Warner Brothers Archives is the largest single studio collection in the world. Donated in 1977 to USC's School of Cinematelevision by Warner Communications, the WBA houses departmental records that detail Warner Brothers' activities from the studio's first major feature, by 4 years in Germany, 1918, to its sale to Seven Arts in 1968. It presents a complete view of the production process during the golden age of Hollywood. UA donated pre-1950 Warner Brothers nitrate negatives to the Library of Congress and post-1951 negatives to the UCLA Film and Television Archive. Most of the company's legal files, scripts, and production materials were donated to the Wisconsin Center for Film and Theater Research.